Introduction to HTML and CSS. Introduction. Lesson overview. Assignment. Additional resources. Knowledge check. Introduction. So here it is. It's time to actually start making things. This section will teach you the basics of HTML and CSS, the two foundational building blocks of pretty much everything on the web. Lesson overview. This section contains a general overview of topics that you will learn in this lesson. Get a basic overview of HTML, CSS, and how they work together. HTML and CSS. HTML and CSS are two languages that work together to create everything that you see when you look at something on the internet. HTML is the raw data that a web page is built out of. All the text, links, cards, lists, and buttons are created in HTML. CSS is what adds style to those plain elements. HTML puts information on a web page, and CSS positions that information, gives it color, changes the font, and makes it look great. If you want to get technical, HTML and CSS aren't programming languages because they are only concerned with presenting information. They are not used to program any logic. JavaScript, which you will be learning in the next section, is a programming language because it's used to make web pages do things. Yeah, there's quite a lot you can do with just HTML and CSS, and you will definitely need them both. The following lessons focus on giving you the tools you need to be successful once you get to the JavaScript content as you continue through your curriculum. Assignment 1. Read HTML versus CSS versus JavaScript. It's a quick overview of the relationship between HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML versus CSS versus JavaScript. What's the difference? Brian Miller posted on December 9, 2019 CSS JavaScript. When you're designing or developing a website, there are three different coding languages that you will want to be aware of. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Content type 1. What can you do with each programming language? 2. Web development and coding languages. 3. What is HTML? 3.1. What can you do with HTML? 4. What is CSS? 4.1. What can you do with CSS? 5. What is JavaScript? 5.1. What can you do with JavaScript? 6. Best resources to learn web development languages. 6.1 Codecademy. 6.2 Further customizing your website. HTML, a language that determines how documents and web pages are displayed in a web browser. The language for the building blocks of any website. CSS, cascading style sheets, a popular style sheet language that determines how a document created in HTML is styled, colors, font styles, layout, and responsive features. JavaScript allows you to change CSS and HTML elements on your website after the site has been loaded, which gives you the ability to make your site more interactive and engaging for users. These three programming languages are typically the foundation of any website, which is why it's important that you're aware of how these languages will affect your website and what they are typically used for. What can you do with each programming language? With HTML, you will be able to create the structure of your website. CSS gives you the ability to make the website look more visually appealing. As for JavaScript, this is a robust programming language that allows you to effectively change the HTML and CSS components of your website to match your specifications precisely. If you own a website but don't know much about coding, knowing the difference between these three programming languages should help you better understand what goes into developing a website. If ever a problem occurs with a component of your site, having a clear idea of what these programming languages are may be enough to help you properly diagnose what is causing the problem and how to fix it. The following article provides an in-depth comparison of the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript programming languages. Web development and coding languages. Websites can be developed with the use of a wide range of different coding and programming languages, some of which are more complex than others. Some of the most common web development languages include HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, Python, Ruby, and SQL. While Ruby and PHP are exceedingly popular among entrepreneurs, startups, and web developers, the primary languages of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript should be enough for you to understand the basics of web design and development. Each of these web development languages has a different purpose. For instance, Ruby is a scalable and fast programming language that can help you build an extensive website or program in just a short period of time. When paired with a Ruby on Rails framework, this language gives developers practically everything they need to build a website. With a language like SQL, developers can maintain and optimize large databases in a much more streamlined manner. Different types of projects incorporate different languages of code. Many professional web developers also have their own preferences that they will use even if other programming languages have proven to be more popular. Various platforms are built on different languages. For instance, WordPress is built mainly with powerful PHP code even though HTML and CSS are used as well. The main language that you use all depends on your specific project and the business goals that you have. By identifying what these goals are, you should have a better idea of which languages are ideal when you are developing a website or application. What is HTML? HTML is a programming language that stands for Hypertext Markup Language. This is a relatively simplistic yet powerful programming language that allows web developers and website owners to create the structure of their websites. If you want a sentence in a blog post to receive a bold font, HTML could be used to achieve this. When using the system, any text files can be tagged for effects, graphics, fonts, or colors. If you've never used any kind of programming language in the past, HTML would be a great place to start. Keep in mind that HTML markups are enhanced by CSS and JavaScript, which is why it's recommended that you learn this programming language first. What can you do with HTML? The main reason why it's important to know HTML is because it allows you as a website owner to create the basic structure of your website, from which you can use any other coding language to enhance the design with a basic understanding of HTML. You can significantly increase the control and flexibility that you have with your website. You will be able to make your own changes by having knowledge of this code. Some platforms will automatically implement many of the more complex functions of the website design, which leaves you with the ability to tend to the minor changes that can be made with HTML. What is CSS? CSS is a style sheet language that's focused almost entirely on improving the presentation of HTML elements. While CSS is a static programming language, it can be used to make your website appear visually pleasing and modern. If you want your website to have a sleek and stylish design, CSS is a programming language to use. With a basic understanding of CSS, you can make changes to the overall look and feel of your website, which is useful when you want to match the appearance of your website with the aesthetics of your brand. What can you do with CSS? Even though CSS is primarily used to create static visual effects, the latest versions of the programming language offer some functionality for the creation of very simple animations. If you want to change the color of some of the text on a web page, basic CSS would allow you to do so by adding style code to the HTML code that's already found on your page along with the presentation of HTML. CSS can also be used to alter the layout and formatting of your website. Once you know the basics of CSS, you should be capable of improving the look of your website and all of the HTML that you have already added to the design. What is JavaScript? JavaScript is among the most important programming languages for website owners who want to make their site more interactive, which makes this the most complex of the three standard programming languages in this article. While HTML provides the structure for a website and CSS allows you to control the presentation of a site, the JavaScript programming language gives you the tools that you need to alter the behavior of different elements that are found on a website page. With this tool, you can add a layer of interactivity to the CSS and HTML elements on your website, which is highly recommended if you want your website to appeal to the modern customer. Most modern websites come with a menu button that can be clicked to display a selection of areas on the website that you can navigate to. The menu button usually reveals a small menu on the side of the page, which adds interactivity to the page itself. All of this is powered by JavaScript and can make your website appear to be more modern and sophisticated. With a basic understanding of JavaScript, you can manipulate the various interactive features of your website to perform a wide range of actions. If you want to have complete control over the design and function of your website, you should know at least some of the coding involved with JavaScript. What can you do with JavaScript? The types of things that you can do with JavaScript are practically limitless. This programming language can provide you with the tools needed to create a calculator for your website, create various keyboard shortcuts that allow users to effortlessly navigate to other pages, play animations when users scroll down the page since you can change your HTML and CSS elements with JavaScript. This can be a very beneficial language to learn. Best resources to learn web development languages. If you're looking to improve your knowledge and understanding of the many common web development languages, there are many fantastic resources that will allow you to enhance your skills in this area. No matter which programming language you want to learn, there are free resources all over the internet that will provide you with what you need to understand the basics of the language in question. If you want to focus primarily on improving the front-end elements of your website, the most important languages to learn include HTML5, CSS3, Bootstrap, and JavaScript. As for the backend, you should consider learning languages like Python, Ruby, and PHP. Codecademy. The best resources available to you include free online courses that will teach you the basics of the language in an organized and structured manner. If you want to learn how to effectively use HTML for your website, check out this course at Codecademy. By the end of the 9-hour course, you should be able to use HTML on your website without running into many issues. The same website also offers free tutorials for CSS and JavaScript, both of which have proven to be very popular and highly effective. While the HTML and CSS courses have 5 and 6 lessons respectively for you to take, the JavaScript course is even more robust and includes 14 lessons with 30 hours of coursework. While it's possible to develop and maintain a website for your business without having having any knowledge of coding via a strong content management system. Having a basic knowledge of the more common programming languages will allow you to edit your current website or start building a new one without assistance. Overall, you have more control over how your website looks, feels, and performs when you have some knowledge of these programming languages. Further customizing your website if you find that your web projects are more complex than you can handle. Consider contacting our team at Bright Designs for assistance. We are an experienced team of developers that have worked on all manner of web design and development projects. We have the expertise and skill set to accomplish your web goals and help your business grow online. Contact Bright Designs or shoot me a message directly to get in touch. Additional resources. This section contains helpful links to related content. It isn't required, so consider it supplemental. This free code camp article goes into a little more depth than the assigned one. It covers things we'll be teaching explicitly in later lessons though, so don't worry about memorizing any of the details. Bookmark dev.io. Read the welcome message. Massive API documentation collection that even works offline. An essential collection of reference material for everything covered and more. Maintained by Free Code Camp. Knowledge check. This section contains questions for you to check your understanding of this lesson on your own. If you're having trouble answering a question, click it and review the material. It links to what do HTML and CSS stand for. Between HTML and CSS, which would you use for putting paragraphs of text on a web page? Between HTML and CSS, which would you use for changing the font and background color of a button? Elements and tags. Introduction. Lesson overview. Assignment. Additional resources. Knowledge check. Introduction. HTML. Hypertext markup language defines the structure and content of web pages. We use HTML elements to create all of the paragraphs, headings, lists, images, and links that make up a typical web page. In this lesson, we will explore how HTML elements work. Lesson overview. This section contains a general overview of topics that you will learn in this lesson. Explain what HTML tags are. Explain what HTML elements are. Elements and tags. Almost all elements on an HTML page are just pieces of content wrapped in opening and closing HTML tags. Opening tags tell the browser this is the start of an HTML element. They are comprised of a keyword enclosed in angle brackets. For example, an opening paragraph tag looks like this. P. Closing tags tell the browser where an element ends. They are almost the same as opening tags. The only difference is that they have a forward slash before the keyword. For example, a closing paragraph tag looks like this. P. A full paragraph element looks like this. You can think of elements as containers for content. The opening and closing tags tell the browser what content the element contains. The browser can then use that information to determine how it should interpret and format the content. There are some HTML elements that do not have a closing tag. These are known as empty elements because they don't wrap any content. We will encounter a few of these in later lessons, but for the most part, elements will have both opening and closing tags. HTML has a vast list of predefined tags that you can use to create all kinds of different elements. It is important to use the correct tags for content. Using the correct tags can have a big impact on two aspects of your sites: how they are ranked in search engines and how accessible they are to users who rely on assistive technologies like screen readers to use the internet. Using the correct elements for content is called semantic HTML. We will explore this in much more depth later on in the curriculum. Assignment 1. Watch Kevin Powell's introduction to HTML video. Additional resources. This section contains helpful links to related content. It isn't required, so consider it supplemental. Don't fear the internet's video about HTML. Knowledge check. This section contains questions for you to check your understanding of this lesson on your own. If you're having trouble answering a question, click it and review the material. It links to what is an HTML tag. What are the three parts of an HTML element? HTML boilerplate. Introduction. Lesson overview. Assignment. Additional resources. Knowledge check. Introduction. All HTML documents have the same basic structure or boilerplate that needs to be in place before anything useful can be done. In this lesson, we will explore the different parts of this boilerplate and see how it all fits together. Lesson overview. This section contains a general overview of topics that you will learn in this lesson: how to write the basic boilerplate for an HTML document, how to open HTML documents in your browser, creating an HTML file to demonstrate HTML boilerplate. We first need an HTML file to work with. Create a new folder on your computer and name it HTML boilerplate. Within that folder, create a new file and name it index.html. You're probably already familiar with a lot of different types of files, for example doc, PDF, and image files. To let the computer know we want to create an HTML file, we need to append the file name with the .html extension as we have done when creating the index.html file. It is worth noting that we named our HTML file index. We should always name the HTML file that will contain the home page of our website's index.html. This is because web servers will by default look for an index.html page when users land on our websites, and not having one will cause big problems. The .type. Every HTML page starts with a .type declaration. The .type's purpose is to tell the browser what version of HTML it should use to render the document. The latest version of HTML is HTML5, and the .type for that version is simply exclamation point. .type HTML. The .types for older versions of HTML were a bit more complicated. For example, this is the .type declaration for HTML4 exclamation point. .type HTML public W3CDTD HTML 4.01 transitional on W3.org. However, we probably won't ever want to be using an older version of HTML, and so we'll always use exclamation point. .type HTML. Open the index.html file created earlier in your text editor and add exclamation point. .type HTML to the very first line. HTML element. After we declare the .type, we need to provide an HTML element. This is what's known as the root element of the document, meaning that every other element in the document will be a descendant of it. This becomes more important later on when we learn about manipulating HTML with JavaScript. For now, just know that the HTML element should be included on every HTML document. Back in the index.html file, let's add the HTML element by typing out its opening and closing tags, like so exclamation point. .type HTML. HTML lang equals on. HTML. What is the lang attribute? Lang specifies the language of the text content in that element. This attribute is primarily used for improving accessibility of the web page. It allows assistive technologies, for example screen readers, to adapt according to the language and invoke correct pronunciation. Head element. The head element is where we put important meta information about our web pages and stuff required for our web pages to render correctly in the browser. Inside the head, we should not use any element that displays content on the web page. The charset meta element, we should always have a meta tag for the charset encoding of the web page in the head element. Meta charset equals UTF-8. Setting the encoding is very important because it ensures that the web page will display special symbols and characters from different languages correctly in the browser. There are many more elements that can go within the head of an HTML document. However, for now it's only crucial to know about the two elements we have covered here. We will introduce more elements that go into the head throughout the rest of the curriculum. Title element. Another element we should always include in the head of an HTML document is the title element. Title. My first web page title. The title element is used to give web pages a human readable title which is displayed in our web page's browser tab. If we didn't include a title element, the web page's title would default to its file name. In our case that would be index.html, which isn't very meaningful for users. This would make it very difficult to find our web page if the user has many browser tabs open. Back in our index.html file, let's add a head element with a charset meta element and a title within it. The head element goes within the HTML element and should always be the first element under the opening HTML tag exclamation point. .type HTML. HTML lang equals on. Head. Meta charset equals UTF. Big. Title. My first web page title. Head. HTML. Body element. The final element needed to complete the HTML boilerplate is the body element. This is where all the content that will be displayed to users will go. The text, images, lists, links, and so on. To complete the boilerplate, add a body element to the index.html file. The body element also goes within the HTML element and is always below the head element, like so exclamation point. .type HTML. HTML lang equals on. Head. Meta charset equals UTF. Big. Title. My first web page title. Head. Body. HTML. Viewing HTML files in the browser. The HTML boilerplate in the index.html file is complete at this point. But how do you view it in the browser? There are a couple of different options. A note. In order to avoid branching our lessons instructions to accommodate for all of the differences between browsers, we are going to be using Google Chrome as our primary browser for the remainder of this course. All references to the browser will pertain specifically to Google Chrome. We strongly suggest that you use Google Chrome for all of your testing going forward. 1. You can drag and drop an HTML file from your text editor into the address bar of your browser. 2. You can find the HTML file in your file system and then double-click it. This will open up the file in the default browser your system uses. 3. You can use the terminal to open the file in your browser Ubuntu. Navigate to the directory containing the file and use Google Chrome index.html macOS. Navigate to the directory containing the file and use open.index.html using one of the methods above. Open up the index.html file we have been working on. You'll notice the screen is blank. This is because we don't have anything in our body to display. Back in the index.html file, let's add a heading. More on these later. To the body and save the file exclamation point. .type HTML. HTML lang equals on. Head. Meta charset equals UTF. Big. Title. My first web page title. Head. Body. H1. Hello World, H1, body, HTML. Now, if you refresh the page in the browser, you should see the changes take effect, and the heading Hello World will be displayed. VS Code shortcut. VS Code has a built-in shortcut you can use for generating all the boilerplate in one go. Please note that this shortcut only works while editing a file with the .html extension or a text file with the HTML language already selected. To trigger the shortcut, delete everything in the index.html file and just enter on the first line. This will bring up a couple of options. Press the enter key to choose the first one, and voila, you should have all the boilerplate populated for you. But it's still good to know how to write the boilerplate yourself in case you find yourself using a text editor like Notepad, heaven forbid, which doesn't have this shortcut. Try not to use the shortcut in your first few HTML projects, so you can build some muscle memory of how to write the boilerplate code. Assignment 1. Watch and follow along to Kevin Powell's brilliant building your first web page video 2. Build some muscle memory by deleting the contents of the index.html file and trying to write out all the boilerplate again from memory. Don't worry if you have to peek at the lesson content the first few times if you get stuck. Just keep going until you can do it a couple of times from memory. 3. Run your boilerplate through an HTML validator. Validators ensure your markup is correct and are an excellent learning tool, as they provide feedback on syntax errors you may be making often and aren't aware of, such as missing closing tags and extra spaces in your HTML. Additional resources. This section contains helpful links to related content. It isn't required, so consider it supplemental. Read through this article about what char sets you should use with your HTML pages. Another option for opening your HTML pages in the browser is using the live server extension with VS Code. This will open your HTML document and automatically refresh it every time you save the document. However, we recommend not using this extension and instead doing it the old-fashioned way by opening the page and refreshing the page manually in the browser for your first few HTML projects. In this way, you can get used to that process and won't become reliant on extensions right away. If you wish, you can add the lang attribute to individual elements throughout the web page. Read through this doc for a better understanding of the lang attribute. Knowledge check. This section contains questions for you to check your understanding of this lesson on your own. If you're having trouble answering a question, click it and review the material. It links to what is the purpose of the dot type declaration. What is the HTML element? What is the purpose of the head element? What is the purpose of the body element? Working with text. Introduction. Lesson overview. Assignment. Additional resources. Knowledge check. Introduction. Most content on the web is text-based, so you will find yourself needing to work with HTML text elements quite a bit. In this lesson, we will learn about the text-based elements you are likely to use the most. Lesson overview. This section contains a general overview of topics that you will learn in this lesson: how to create paragraphs, how to create headings, how to create bold text, how to create italicized text, the relationships between nested elements, how to create HTML comments, paragraphs. What would you expect the following text to output on an HTML page? Body. Lorem ipsum dolor sit emet. Consecutor adipicing elit. Sed duius temper incident laboria dolor magna aliqua. Again ad minimum quis nostra exercitation lampo laboris nisi ad aliquid ex acomodo consequit. Body. It looks like two paragraphs of text, and so you might expect it to display in that way. However, that is not the case. As you can see in the output below, when the browser encounters new lines like this in your HTML, it will compress them down into one single space. The result of this compression is that all of the text is clumped together into one long line. If we want to create paragraphs in HTML, we need to use the paragraph element, which will add a new line after each of our paragraphs. A paragraph element is defined by wrapping text content with a p tag. Changing our example from before to use paragraph elements fixes the issue. Headings are different from other HTML text elements. They are displayed larger and bolder than other text to signify that they are headings. There are 6 different levels of headings starting from H1 to H6. The number within a heading tag represents the headings level. H1 is the most important and is larger than the other headings, and H6 is the lowest level and therefore the smallest of the headings. Headings are defined much like paragraphs. For example, to create an H1 heading, we wrap our heading text in a H1 tag. Using the correct level of heading is important as levels provide hierarchy to the content. An H1 heading should always be used for the heading of the overall page, and the lower level headings should be used as the headings for content in smaller sections of the page. Strong element. The strong element makes text bold. It also semantically marks text as important. This affects tools like screen readers that users with visual impairments will rely on to use your website. The tone of voice on a screen reader will change to communicate the importance of the text within a strong element. To define a strong element, we wrap text content in a strong tag. You can use strong on its own, but you will probably find yourself using the strong element much more in combination with other text elements like this. Sometimes you will want to make text bold without giving it an important meaning. You'll learn how to do that in the CSS lessons later in the curriculum. M element. The M element makes text italic. It also semantically places emphasis on the text, which again affects things like screen readers. To define an emphasized element, we wrap text content in a M tag. To use M on its own, again, like the strong element, you will find yourself mostly using the M element with other text elements. Nesting and indentation. You may have noticed that in all the examples in this lesson we indent any elements that are within other elements. This is known as nesting elements. When we nest elements within other elements, we create a parent and child relationship between them. The nested elements are the children and the element they are nested within is the parent. In the following example, the body element is the parent and the paragraph is the child. Just as in human relationships, HTML parent elements can have many children. Elements at the same level of nesting are considered to be siblings. For example, the two paragraphs in the following code are siblings, since they are both children of the body tag and are at the same level of nesting as each other. We use indentation to make the level of nesting clear and readable for ourselves and other developers who will work with our HTML in the future. It is recommended to indent any child elements by 2 spaces. The parent, child, and sibling relationships between elements will become much more important later when we start styling our HTML with CSS and adding behavior with JavaScript. For now, however, it is just important to know the distinction between how elements are related and the terminology used to describe their relationships. HTML comments. HTML comments are not visible to the browser. They allow us to comment on our code so that other developers or our future selves can read them and get some context about something that might not be clear in the code. Writing an HTML comment is simple. We just put and at the end of the comment. For example, assignment 1. Watch Kevin Powell's HTML paragraph and headings video 2. Watch Kevin Powell's HTML bold and italic text video 3. To get some practice working with text in HTML, create a plain blog article page which uses different headings, uses paragraphs, and has some text in the paragraphs bolded and italicized. You can use lorem ipsum to generate dummy text in place of real text as you build your sites. Additional resources. This section contains helpful links to related content. It isn't required, so consider it supplemental. It looks like this lesson doesn't have any additional resources yet. Help us expand this section by contributing to our curriculum. Knowledge check. This section contains questions for you to check your understanding of this lesson on your own. If you're having trouble answering a question, click it and review the material. It links to how do you create a paragraph in HTML, how do you create a heading in HTML, how many different levels of headings are there and what is the difference between them, what element should you use to make text bold and important, what element should you use to make text italicized to add emphasis to it, what relationship does an element have with any nested elements within it, what relationship do 2 elements have if they are at the same level of nesting, how do you create HTML comments?